What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of The Mile High Perspective, Real Estate Served on the Rocks. My name is Charlie Sardelli. Today I'm here with
Jamison Amaros. What's happening, guys?
And as you guys can tell, we're missing the third leg of our tripod. We held a space here with the barrel.
Oscar's looking a little thick.
Yeah, don't tell him that he's in there.
Oh, yeah. So he's going to pop out at the end.
We're not going to tell him that.
He's going to pop out at the end. Hola, ¿cómo estás?
Oh, man, that'd be wonderful. That would be wonderful. But
Yo soy
honestly,
Oscar
guys,
Ibarra.
There we go. I like it. Honestly, I realized that he changes the way he says his last name for every episode.
Yeah.
Throws me off every time. But
Ibarra.
we're here. And guys, we are normally 3 Colorado real estate agents that try and make sense of the real estate market and just real estate terminology for you guys, the consumers. We put our episodes out audio Friday and our video anywhere between Monday and Wednesday every week. So subscribe to our channel, Living in Colorado, The Mile High Perspective. We have podcast episodes. We have shorts on there coming soon. We've been saying it, but we're trying to get our community spotlights together. The weather in Colorado has been a little bit weird over the last month. So trying
Or
to
if
get
you've
out.
lived here forever, normal.
Normal, yeah. Well, and it's funny. I saw a TikTok video of a guy. He's like, I've lived in Colorado for 5 weeks now. Here's my review. I was like, oh boy, I've been here for 5 years.
Yeah, my brother-in-law moved from Ohio 2 years ago. No, about a year ago. And I was at the gym with him. And he goes, dude, so like when do I go to the pool during the week? And I go between the hours of 9 a.m. and 12 p.m. And then you get the fuck out.
That's it.
Until about 4 p.m. Then you can go back.
Mm-hmm. That's it. And, you know, it's one of those things where we can't really predict what's going to go on, right? And ultimately, guys, honestly, today's kind of an episode where we're just going to shoot the shit on the market. Just talk a little bit, see about where we think it might go, what's happening. I mean, they just came to some kind of an agreement on the debt ceiling. So from what Colin told me, our lender, you guys know Colin from past episodes, he was like, oh, yeah, the market, the rates are already trending down. All right.
I mean, dude, so you can picking a prediction on the housing market is like shooting fish in a barrel. Okay.
There it is.
There's 1,000 of them, depending on who you talk to, what data they're looking at. And I think the overall theme that we've talked about is you can make predictions and sometimes they're wrong, right? Mm-hmm. One of the things I was researching earlier is, if you guys remember back in January, I think when we came back on the podcast for the first time, we did a market update.
Yep.
And at that point, it was almost a unanimous consensus from Zillow, from NAR, from Moody's Analytics, from Forbes, you name it, saying, hey, here's the deal. Interest rates where they're at are going to lead to a price decline of, on average, anywhere from -1 to almost 10 to 15% loss in all of 2023. That was in January, right?
Yep.
And the funny part is, and this is why I just think it's important to get multiple opinions, everybody's looking at the same data. Right? Mm-hmm. But the way they interpret it's different, because in my head, when those predictions came out, my thought went to, well, we don't have enough houses still. Yep. So there's got to be upward pressure on home prices because there's just not enough. Interest rates were high, right? They were at 6.75, 6.85, 7. And the consensus of the overall thinking was, well, they'd have to get down to like the high 5s, mid to high 5s for people to come back to the market. Mm-hmm. Fast forward to spring. What happened was we found this weird sweet spot where as soon as rates went under 6.5, all of a sudden mortgage applications went up 23%. And it's like, wait a second.
Wild.
That's still extremely expensive, but you wouldn't know that. And you couldn't know that. You could predict it, but you couldn't know it until it actually happened. And then all of a sudden we're like, wait, why are we getting multiple offer situations on a $500,000 home at a 6.5%? When we didn't have that at a 6.75.
And it's so crazy because, you know, you see a lot of the thumbnails on YouTube, news. The market's going to crash due to this. But again, how scared people are there. But again, it just proved, take time to regulate. People got used to those higher interest rates. And then they were like, you know what? I can deal with this. I can manage. And they're still buying. And maybe not in states like ours where, let's be honest, home prices are still pretty elevated.
Yes.
And
they did come down, though.
They did.
They're down.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean,
down.
I know
we went from 600,000 average to about 575.
Yeah. I mean, even in areas that I was looking at for some clients in Arvada, Aurora, we're seeing, I didn't see anything below 300,000.
Mm-hmm. Oh no, you're not going to find anything below 300.
No, and now I'm seeing 350 to 3, maybe some 280s, but at the same time, it's better, right? Yep. And as you guys can see, if you're watching the video, we got some merch. No, I'm just kidding. My
merch.
My aunt's a beautiful woman and decided to make this shirt for me so I can rep the
I
brand.
like it. I like it a lot.
It looks good. I like the logo on it.
Yeah.
I love you. Thank you very much for helping me out with the shirt situation. And guys, like I said, this is more free form. We're just kind of going to hang out and have a conversation, drink some bourbon today. And on that note, Jamison, you want to introduce the bourbon?
Yeah. So this is kind of fun, right? We talk a lot about the mass exodus of people leaving Colorado due to housing prices and trying to find, different places to live. One of the places people migrate to is Texas. And LongBranch is a Kentucky bourbon that they decided to take to Texas.
Interesting.
And mix with some American oak barrels and mesquite charcoal. And kind of make they call it where Kentucky and Texas are best friends.
They're shaking hands.
A new bourbon of sort of shaking your tail feather because it's wild turkey.
You know what's really important for new things?
Great song, by the way. Shout out Bad Boys for Life.
What I was going to say is partnerships. And if I remember correctly, we've got a pretty good partnership with this bourbon.
We do, yeah. The partnership, you guys would never guess, but they drove this bourbon to Texas in a Buick.
Oh.
Yeah. They partnered. So the master distiller for Wild Turkey, and give me a second, his name was.
So that's an important note to make, though. This is a Wild Turkey product.
It is a Wild Turkey, yes.
So again, another brand that does have more entry level opportunity for people to drink.
Yeah,
kind of stepping
it's
in.
Good, easy brand.
Yep.
Eddie Russell.
Edward,
for if you want to be cordial.
Okay.
And allegedly, I didn't know he had this title.
The title's great.
Cultural tastemaker. All right. Matthew McConaughey.
That's right, baby. That's right. I was drinking bourbon.
I don't know
before they asked me to drink bourbon.
I don't know how he got involved. I don't know if his Buick broke down on the side of the road. They're like, "Hey, here's some wild turkey." But here we are.
But I mean, he is Mr. Texas, right? Like
he is Mr. Texas.
He taught at Texas University, graduated.
Yes. And he has one of the greatest commencement speeches or graduation speeches I've heard. His book is fantastic.
Yep.
So shout out Matthew McConaughey and your Buick. I'll never buy Buick, but shout out
Makes
to
sense as to why he has the title he has, right? Tastemaker?
Cultural. I don't even know what that means.
Cultural tastemaker.
So like he just
facilitates the culture and how.
Like if I give him like a shitty brand of whiskey.
No digs, I promise. No digs there.
We turn it into LongBranch because it's Matthew McConaughey, and he has become a cultural tastemaker.
Hey man, when you got the name Matthew McConaughey, you've been in some crazy movies.
I mean, my name is an Irish whiskey, and I haven't seen any sort of royalties from that, so I don't know.
You're right.
I don't know. And you go to Ireland, and maybe I'll get some free drinks.
That would be pretty cool.
My beer did have red in it. Now it's just got some gray, so. It is what it is. But no, I'm excited to try this. It's cost-wise, it's $42.
Not bad.
Essentially, it's high-class wild turkey.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, like, if you want something that, you want to impress the friends and the family, you're not huge into bourbon, good entry level. We took a sip of the neck pour, and it wasn't terrible.
No.
So I'm excited to kind of let this one breathe and sip on it throughout the episode. But, if you don't want to sit there and be I'm bringing Jack Daniels to every party, then this might be a step
it comes
up.
down to marketing, right? We talked about bottle, we talked about presentation. Right. I mean, the fact that this alone is a small batch.
Yeah, and so I equate it to it's wild turkey is me if I haven't had my beard trimmed or haircut in like 6 months.
Yeah.
I hit up scissors and scotch, I get cleaned up, bam, I'm LongBranch. I'm
that's
basically
good.
The same, I just am more presentable.
Yes. Yeah. I like it. It's pretty much whenever I get my hair cut.
Exactly. It's like I'm a brand new man.
But I mean, just look at the bottle, guys. In all honesty, the color on this bottle is lighter than any other small batch that we've seen.
Well, especially for being aged 8 years.
8 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, it's only at 43%. So you can definitely tell that Wild Turkey was trying to be still the drinkable brand.
Correct.
The brand
they want to appeal to the masses.
Exactly. And I mean, just like I said, the color alone, it's very light. Mm-hmm. It's a very, very light color.
Very amber.
Yeah. And yeah. Well, that's the thing. I couldn't even. If I can describe the color to everybody listening, imagine if you took like just a brown marker, okay? And you just did like a Crayola marker, and you dipped it in water and held it there for like 3 seconds.
So I used to do that, but with highlighters in empty vodka bottles in my college.
Oh yeah,
for blacklight
The
parties.
display.
Yep.
Yep. I know, yeah. Jeez. How many? I told you guys in the past that I made smoking apparatuses out of them, and I can't tell you how many times I would walk in and that's what would be in the. Oh God.
College
as a placeholder.
College. Matthew McConaughey knows.
Yes. All right.
At UT.
Let's go ahead and get this first sip in. Cheers.
Knocking off the coasters.
Yeah, the coaster. I like it. That's how freeform it is today. We didn't even put the coasters
fuck
out.
the coaster.
On the nose, the heat is evident. I remember that you said something about in the tasting notes a little bit more caramel, plum.
The tasting notes, caramel, plum, apricot, spice, hint of oak. Yeah.
You know, honestly, on the nose, I can get a little bit of that sweetness.
Yeah.
From the
aroma, I can get the coffee, or sorry, not the toffee.
Yes.
And the vanilla for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it comes off very drinkable.
Yeah.
I'll give it
100%.
that.
I mean, that's what they said this was, right? Like a smooth, just a smooth drinker. Going from the past bourbons that we've had at 50, I feel like this one's just kind of starting off with a disadvantage. Only because it is at 43.
Yeah.
But I will say on that first sip, as it lingers for a little bit, you do get a little bit more of the sweetness. But in all reality, that first sip is very much like charred air, like smoked air.
Speaking of charred air, one of the most underrated Matthew McConaughey movies of all time. It's about dragons. Reign of Fire. Charlie's never seen it.
I've never seen it.
Listen, you know what? We're gonna put the link up.
Okay.
If you guys haven't watched Reign of Fire,
Okay.
go watch Reign of Fire. It's got Matthew McConaughey and Christian Bale
And dragons.
and dragons.
I'm down.
It is Game of Thrones, but with like armored tanks. It
I'm
is
down for that.
fucking awesome.
I'm down for that.
And McConaughey's shaved bald, neck tattoos, full sleeve tattoos, jacked. And they're in this like the fucking in Europe after dragons have taken over.
Okay.
And there's these small pockets of humanity that are trying to survive. It's so fucking good.
Sounds like a good one to drink.
So the
this
fact that
bourbon
you
to.
saand charred air and dude, Reign of Fire, go watch it. Reign of Fire.
Matthew McConaughey,
I might go watch it tonight.
We got you, bud.
Yep.
And it's 100% just off the rip. For me, complexity is not really there with the flavor. Definitely gives way to some flavor, but again, the lightness of this really shows through in the flavor, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those bourbons that knows what it is and is not trying to pretend to be anything else.
Yeah,
like,
well,
it's
I mean,
not
$43. Again, you pull this up, you drive
Yeah.
in, you pull up to somebody's house with it. Looks like a nice bottle.
Yeah, I had some. What was I sipping on last night? Smoke Wagon Uncut Unfiltered, right? So very, very different.
What a contrast.
58%, almost 120 proof.
Yep.
Very, very big difference. Like this, I could drink in a Gatorade bottle while playing soccer.
Oh yeah, well 100%. Yeah, and that's what I mean. It's a small batch. Like,
Don't do that, by the way. But I'm just saying, based on what we've drank in the past. But it doesn't pretend to be anything else.
No,
right?
no, I respect it for that, for sure. Especially with like remember we had the Breckenridge, the rum cask, and that one felt a little more forced. Like, hey, we want it to taste like this rather than, hey, this is what it is. Here it is.
I did almost pick up a something I've never heard of before. It was a whiskey or bourbon, but it was aged in Caribbean rum casks, and the color was like yellow.
Interesting.
And I was like, do I? It might be a fuck it episode.
Yeah.
I went with this instead.
Hey, at least it wasn't another. At least you didn't bring another brown bag in.
No. Nope.
That's how you. That's when you really know we're getting fucking right.
Yeah,
When it's
we'll,
just like,
we'll show you the label for this one.
But on your point, man, and there's a reason that Jamison, as a realtor in the United States, in the state of Colorado, is drinking 58% bourbon, right? What the hell's going on, man?
I don't know.
It's
don't
getting
know.
wild.
It is wild. I've talked to people. You've talked to people, agents, lenders. Listen, nobody knows what the fuck's going to go on.
No.
Nobody knows what's happening. The fact that the debt ceiling has been a thing since January, but it didn't reflect up until recently shows that people aren't paying attention.
Yeah.
The fact that you had the biggest conglomerates of data analytics saying that housing prices were going to drop 5 to 10% on average through 2023. And now February, March, 4 months removed from that. Now Zillow came out and their prediction is home values are actually going to increase by 4.8%.
See, and I'd honestly, and again, this is a great point as to how, because Zillow, Redfin, these are the things that people see, right? The headlines, the titles that people know. I would love to see where they gain that data from, only because it's hard for me to think, knowing the market, knowing what's happening in Colorado right now, that we will see another 5% jump in home prices.
So I think personally, I think it is the driving factor is supply and demand. That's really all it is, right?
100%.
So, I mean, if you look at it, right? So I'm looking at the data from RE Colorado, and this is, what is today? Thursday, right?
Yep.
So this is over the last 7 days. We had 1,421 new listings. Okay. And most listings come out on Thursdays.
Yep.
So that includes today.
And the reason that is, it's a good time to list a property.
Yeah, on the weekends, people are out and about shopping. But in those same days, we had almost 1,300 houses go pending. Right? So realistically, in a rolling 7 days, we're only gaining 200 some odd units to sell every single week.
Wild.
So home prices can only drop so much.
Yeah.
Because there's not enough inventory, and that includes new builds, right? That includes all the permits that are being pulled, and we talked about new build sentiment a couple episodes ago that has been increasing, right? And we predicted it. Actually, if you guys go back, we said that the incentives were going to start going away. Guess what? They're starting to go away. Yep. But they also can't build houses fast enough.
100%.
So now what we're seeing is, interest rates are 6.8. Right. We had some really bad days going up to the debt ceiling. It's in votes now. So as long as it passes, that should calm things down. But even in high interest rates, houses are still 1,400 houses went pending in the last 7 days. Or sorry, 1,300 and 1,400 came on the market. So for every 1,300 we're selling, we're only gaining another 100. And I know there's more than 100 of you motherfuckers out there that are looking to buy a house.
Yep. 100%.
So you can't. I'm sorry. It's not, I don't think they're going to drop. And I thought that prediction was wrong in January.
Yeah.
I'm trusting obviously the people that have metadata's worth of or meta.
Yeah. Metadata.
Metadata.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like an amount.
Okay.
Whatever. Anyway, a lot of data showing this. And we saw in April, in Colorado specifically, home prices actually rose 1.8%, right? The consensus, and I pulled this up. So here's just a really quick rundown, right? So NAR, which is the National Association of Realtors, their chief economist, Lawrence Yun, said that the sales volume will probably drop by about 7% year over year in 2023. Okay.
Yep.
But your home prices on average up to 1 or 2% year over year.
Well, and it's so interesting to think too, and it's the natural progression of supply and demand, right? Is if you have a high demand and low supply, almost the only thing that can happen is for prices to rise, because if you have so many people that are looking to buy,
right, you're going to settle on a price.
Exactly. So and it's it's almost an inverse correlation as you would think about it. Is if more people are looking to buy and there's not enough houses, then how are the house prices going up?
So here, keep talking.
But it makes more sense that if there's not a lot of homes and you have more people that are trying to buy, especially in the United States right now, and we touched on this before, how people are moving and relocating across the United States pretty regularly because of the uptick in remote work that's been happening.
Correct. Yes.
We've seen so many more people willing to move out of states that they're comfortable in. And unfortunately, what that means is a lot of states like Virginia, North Carolina, Tennessee, South Carolina. I mean, you're even seeing it in New Mexico now, Colorado. You would think, before I moved out here, people were going, Colorado is one of the most expensive states in the country. Yeah, but it's not compared to California and Texas.
Right.
So
or Seattle.
Exactly. So you're
Phoenix.
seeing people take the opportunity where, hey, I'm sorry, people, you live there and you can't afford it, but I want to get out and I can't afford it, so I'm going to move.
Well, I think you bring up an interesting point, right? Because, and I think what you just touched on is partly why these predictions are all over the place. Because previously, before the pandemic, the workforce was static.
Yes.
So you could predict with pretty high degree of certainty what specific markets were going to do because the workforce there was, and we had it, right? Everybody lived in the cities. Okay. Then all of a sudden, back in the 80s and 90s, really the 90s probably, the suburbs blew up because you had amenities and all the baby boomers were having kids and these kids needed schools and you couldn't live in the city and work for Wall Street and blah, 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 and also raise a kid. So now people went to the suburbs, right? Well, then when they went to suburbs, there's a reason the suburbs were concentrated within about a 30 to 40 minute drive of major metropolitan areas because they could commute back and forth. They'd get up, drop their kids off at school. They'd go into work in the city. They'd come back from work in the city. You had transit lines pop up, aka the light rail, the subway system, whatever, right?
Denver's still trying to put a light rail out to Boulder.
Right. So what happened was before COVID, the markets you could predict because the people were going to stay there, right? And the only time they were going to move was because if the job forced them to move, right? That was the big thing. So I could sit there and look at a market like, call it Greensboro, North Carolina, versus Austin, Texas, versus Lawrence, Kansas, versus Denver, Colorado, and predict with a very high degree of certainty, hey, this is what the housing market's going to do because the population is going to be static. To your point, when COVID hit and remote work happened, now all of a sudden people are like, holy shit, I can move. And there's not a way to predict where they're going to move other than saying, well, I guess in cheaper areas, which are now going to get more expensive. But then as they move out of the more expensive to the cheaper, then the more expensive gets cheaper. But then there could be certain incentives for businesses to house their employees in the more expensive states based on deal. So now you start to get all these different extenuating circumstances and factors that muddy this idea of like, well, what are home prices going to do? We don't know. There's also that's also the reason why you see the East Coast rebounding faster than the West Coast, right? I want to say FHA came out with their home price appreciation data for April, and by and large, the West half of the United States still declined by about 1%, whereas the East Coast increased. Why? Well, because 2 years prior, the West Coast was stupid fucking expensive. So everybody moved to the Midwest, the East, the Sun Belt, and now those areas are blowing up. But there's not a way to predict it because if I'm a remote worker and I've got 15 different cities I can move to that are all cheaper, you're not going to tell me.
No. Well, and that's what I was going to say is you guys heard me talk about this about a week. I think it was 2 weeks ago now.
About a week ago.
That I went to visit North Carolina and obviously real estate agent. I was curious. So I started looking around the area, talking with friends about how they're doing. And I had friends that were struggling and talking about properties that were $250,000 to $270,000. I wanted to throw up. Because it's almost like right now, if I'm talking investment future wise, if I had a position that was remote, that was paying me adequately, 100%, I would create a 5-year plan, move to North Carolina, buy a property, sit on that equity for 5 years, move out, rent it, come back when I want. 100%. And it seems like with the way that information is being spread now. People have more availability to it, right? TikTok, social media, whatever it is. More people are thinking that way. More people are viewing it that way. If I can go remote and do what I want to do when I want to do it, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, and I think the other piece of that when we talk about the prediction of, hey, what's going to happen in the housing market, because of that same access to information, right? And we all, and you're on TikTok, I'm on TikTok, we have the YouTube channel, like everybody's competing for eyeballs, right?
Yes.
There's a reason that we try and do topical discussions, aka the debt ceiling, when we did the loan level price adjustment episode, all that kind of stuff, right? Because we want to get the information out to you guys first. I'll be honest, we do. That's the whole point, right? With these predictions, it's the same thing. It's not clickbait, but there's news sources and there's media sources that want to get the information out to the general public, and they sacrifice potentially accuracy for eyeballs because it's a for-profit business, 100%. Right? So I think what happened is in January, this tidal wave of interest rates are high, way too high for people, even though they, for whatever reason, just ignored supply, right? And said, it's going to drop, right? And then everybody sat on the sidelines from January until March, essentially, waiting for prices to drop. And then all of a sudden, it was like, wait a second, spring buying season happened and prices were actually increasing. What's happening? Now all the predictions are the opposite, right? So now they're, actually home prices are going to increase because now we remembered that demand is a thing on the other side of the supply equation. right? Or vice versa. Like, oh, there is demand still because people still want to buy houses. Like, you don't want to live in your parents' basement.
Yeah.
I lived in my parents' basement for 3 months. I can't do that again. I would buy a house. Do I have to sacrifice a little bit? Yeah. Can I pick up a side gig? Can I bartend? Can I do whatever to make it work? Can I cut down on expenses? I could probably make it work.
People don't want to. That's the thing. It's not about making it work, right? And that's ultimately we hear about it all the time. Oh, we talk about it as real estate agents just want to make the sale, right? But at the end of the day, you touched on it earlier. We're not trying to make anybody house poor.
No. When I say make it work, what I'm saying is people are at the point where they want to own something.
Yeah. Oh, no.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And they will try to make it work, even with higher interest rates.
Yes.
And the predictions in the beginning of the year didn't factor that in, and then didn't factor in the fact that we are still severely underbuilt. There's another statistic here that came out. So over the last 2 years, 18 million homeowners, right, refinanced to a lower rate.
And you said 3 years?
In the last 2 years.
2 years.
Right?
Yep.
There's around 230 million homeowners in the United States.
And that statistic would be based on 2020 and
2021 to 2022, right?
Yeah.
But they refinanced to lower rates. So
which they were lower
That's
at that time.
18 million homes that are not going to go on the market anytime soon.
Yep.
Because they're at a lower rate, so they have no reason to sell.
And again, that's a great point. And
that's
I'm
10% of the homeowners in the United States.
Yeah. Well, and
that's huge.
It's such a great point because if you are in the real estate market right now and you're looking and you're researching, you've probably heard people talk about supply, demand, inventory, interest rates. But at the end of the day, and we've touched on it multiple times already, people who got locked in at 2.8, 3.3, 3.6, I'm sorry, but nobody in their right mind is going to refi, is going to sell unless they're moving out of the state.
Yes.
Which again, demand supply, right? They're not going to put themselves in that situation. And now on top of not only the fact that they had 2%, 2.8 in those interest rates, home prices have continued to rise.
Right.
So, okay, if I could have bought my home 2 years ago at $500,000 at 2.8%, cool. If I refi now, my home price, at least what we saw at Colorado tax evaluations, could be up 35 to 45%. So now that $500,000 home could be worth $650,000 to $700,000 at 7%. So when you have two things that are growing at the same time, it just doesn't make sense for the normal consumer, for the family, to sell and put themselves in that situation.
Well, and to your point, right? Let's say I do want to move out of the state and I work remote. That's great. But we're not the only state with inventory constraints.
Yes.
It's nationwide. So then I'm fighting the battle of, well, if I do want to move somewhere else, can I buy a place there?
Am I going to have to go into a bidding war? Am I going to,
and then I'm going to end up paying as much, if not more, out of pocket than I would have if I just stay put, right? Yeah. Like we talked about it. My wife and I talked about it last night. My goal, right, is to own my home for 5 years, and I want to sell it and buy something on at least an acre, 5,000 square feet, somewhere where I don't stare at my neighbors, right?
Yep.
But right now, we're at a 3.25.
Yep.
So at a 6.75, I mean, we're talking 4 times.
You literally double your payment.
It's stupid. It's dumb. It makes no sense whatsoever. So I think people have to get creative. At the end of the day, if the question is like, what's going to happen in the housing market? Fuck, man.
So let me ask, how, in your experience, what would be, how could we do better with supply? What would lead to a better supply?
I mean, if you're talking Colorado specifically, it really depends, right? Because when you talk about home supply, there's 2 categories. There's single family residence and then multifamily.
Yep.
Right? The problem right now is multifamily residences are a lot more profitable for people to build.
Yes.
Okay. So if I'm a developer and I'm looking at my 2 options and I've got, I don't know, call it $30 million that I want to spend, right? And I go, okay, I could either develop single family homes or multifamily. Well, zoning, for one, in Colorado, favors single family.
Yep.
But because of that, multifamily is much more profitable because it's far scarcer, right? We went to a seminar, a month and a half ago, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And I mean, Colorado's underbuilt, 20% under every other major metropolitan area when it comes to multifamily, right? So if I have the money and I can get zoning to build multifamily, I'm going to build multifamily, which will help people that want to live in townhomes, condos, duplexes, fourplexes, whatever. So the problem is you need to somehow make financial sense for developers to build what we need to build. And in Colorado, I think it's threefold. I think, yes, we need more multifamily because I think starting out, you should, I'm going to go out on a limb here, right? In Colorado, you should be able to buy a 2-bed, 2-bath, decent size, call it 1,100 square foot townhome with a little balcony. You should be able to buy one of those for around $200,000 to $250,000.
Yes, 100%.
I think, right?
100%. No, you're absolutely right.
I think
based on a regulated, even, equal market.
Yes,
Yeah,
and from a single family home, my first home. We just did this. I bought my house. What is it? 2023 now. I bought the house in 2016. So what is that? 7 years ago. My house when I bought it as a starter home, was the first house we bought, was a 3-bed, 3-bath. I want to say it was like 1,700 square feet with a backyard, unfinished basement. Basement was like, I think, another 600 square feet. So 2,400, something like that, right? We bought it brand new for $357,000. Okay. That same house now in Castle Rock is a $600,000 house, right? Yeah. So do I think that's sustainable? I don't. And if you ask me like what we need, we just need more homes because as the supply increases, then the demand starts to get satisfied. And as demand gets satisfied, home prices start to level out from single family. Multifamily, I think we'll see those level out here over the next year or so because there is a shit ton of permits that are slated to be complete.
Not only permits, but most multifamily are investment in second properties, which are going to be taxed heavily.
Now, there is a scary underbelly to this where if you go back about 3 years, the banks, because if I'm a developer, right, and I want to build multifamily, I'm still getting a loan from the bank.
Yes.
Well, the banks were kind of doing some very borderline sketchy loans when it comes to multifamily because the return was so good.
Yep.
And there's a lot of mortgages that are getting due. And what's going to start happening is as more multifamily gets completed, you're going to have rent decrease because people are going to have more options. Well, and when rent decreases, now all of a sudden as those mortgages are coming due, these developers are looking at these multifamily homes and going, oh shit, I might not be able to pay this. Yep. In which case, if they go bankrupt, then what happens? Well,
and that's where I think it's an interesting thing. And please, listeners, viewers, don't get mad at me for this. But the only possible stave and hold off that I could see is going to be higher taxes and higher penalties on people in order to, I don't want to say force them, but you have a secondary property. You bought it at 2.8%. We're going to make you pay for that second property a little bit more than your main property because at this point, the
problem is it's you'd be reactive at that point, right? Or retroactive. I think they did that. We talked about it last week a little bit. Or maybe it was 2 episodes ago. I've been editing a lot of videos lately, where the interest rate on secondary homes, vacation homes, has increased, right? Or you have to have 25% down, 30% down. That makes sense. I still think, in my head, just as a counterpoint, that part of the allure of owning a home is being able to have an asset that you can't necessarily like turn into money immediately. Okay. But if I have the ability to own a home for 5 years, make my mortgage payments on time, pay my property taxes, do improvements on the home, live in it, raise a family, whatever it is, right? I think I should be able to then 5, 6, 7 years down the road, take out a HELOC, right, for $200,000 and go put that $200,000 down on a $600,000 condo on a lake at 30% down and then rent that out and then make money, right? Like that's the whole purpose of owning an asset. You know what I'm saying?
That's the American dream, right?
So I think my counterpoint is like, I really do believe it is a very simple equation. And the simple equation is we have to give some sort of incentive to spur housing construction, specifically in single family and affordable housing.
Yep.
Those are the two things I think we need to do.
Yeah.
Because that's the other piece of this, right? Is we talk about affordable housing. Well, what affordable housing does is it still rolls into comps and it can still influence home prices, right? But they're not the most profitable things to build.
No.
So a lot of people will shy away from it because they're like, all right, well, I'm doing it from a, to use your word, an altruistic standpoint of like, yes, I think people should be able to afford something and own something. But you got to remember who's building these are for-profit companies that are looking at it and going, dude, I could build an affordable housing and my ROI is return on investment, right, is 2.5%, right? Or my cash on cash return is 2.5%. Or I could build a multifamily that is, a class A, which means amenities, upgraded finishes, et cetera. And my ROI on that is 10 to 12%, right? Like think about it this way. And I was listening to a great podcast about a month and a half ago, and they were talking about multifamily class A, B, and C units, right? Yeah. If I go from a class B unit, if I'm a developer and I'm building it, that means it is a condominium, basic amenities, maybe a clubhouse, blah, 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 blah. Okay. My ROI on that's roughly 5-6%. Mm-hmm. If I get rented out 75% occupancy, 80% occupancy, whatever, I can charge a certain amount of rent. If I turn around and invest a little bit more and take it from a class B to a class A, and my class A now involves a pool, a spa, a rooftop, upgraded appliances, upgraded countertops, LVP flooring, etc., that 6% goes to 12, 13, 14, 15%.
Welcome to Colorado.
Right? Now, what I left out is, what are class C? Class C is affordable housing. So if I am a developer and I have purchased a plot of land, much like this table, or this lovely barrel, and I want to build something on top of it to make money, and I have no other incentive other than I'm going to build it, I'm going to rent it out, and I'm going to reap the benefits. Why in God's name would I build a class B or a class C? What I'm going to build is a class A, and I'm going to charge $2,400 a month in rent, and I am going to make a killing. Yep. So I think what has to happen is the government does need to step in and go, hey, here's the deal. We will subsidize you to build a class B or a class C, and we will make up some of that return on investment by rewarding you for building that type of property.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and then the other factor, and I think Oscar touched on this last week, is like, this conversation started is like, where can we go from here, right? How do we get more?
It's the fuck it episode. We don't know.
Well, and it's more or less like I think we're in this stagnant waiting period where we have the boomer generation, the great stalemate. Yes, exactly. But we have the boomer generation who, again, not going to refi, not going to sell. They've been in the homes. But
unless they die.
Well, I'm sorry, but that's where I'm going with this. Is you have the largest generation coming up on the point where they're going to start passing away, and those properties are going to come available
from the others.
And unfortunately, if you think of without government intervention, how could we affect the inventory? It's those moments, and also a lot of people are upset about the taxes that are going on, especially here in Colorado, about secondary properties and stuff like that.
Right.
But these people who are, again, for profit, buying and building, if they bought at 2.8 and they intended to now fill that space, now that they can't because they just don't, they don't have the inventory for it, what's going to happen? They're going to start selling, and unfortunately, it seems like the biggest, oh man, this is going to sound so bad. The biggest benefit to inventory is people suffering and not being able to afford their secondary homes or investment properties.
Yeah. The other interesting part of this argument to me is when we talk about developers, because they're driving our inventory, right? You said the word socialism a couple episodes ago, and I'm sure people are like, oh my God.
Burn it down.
Right? However, those same people are also complaining about home prices, right? Mm-hmm. But on the same side,
and the fact, complain if the government stepped in.
The fact that developers are for-profit companies is driving your home prices up. Mm-hmm. And if you do want the government to step in, I'm not really sure where you stand, right? And I think this is where my comment a couple episodes, or when we were talking about taxes, I think is when it was.
Yeah.
And I said it's funny because people only get butthurt if it affects them. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, 100%.
Like, you could sit there and, I don't know, complain about something. I don't just pick literally anything, right?
Hey,
And
anybody
I
can
could
find anything to complain
But I could
about.
look at you and go, Charlie, it's fucking stupid. Like, just shut up, dude. Like, stop complaining.
Mm-hmm.
But if the same thing happened to me and then all of a sudden affected me, then you would be the first person I would go to, like, dude, I can't believe that happened.
Mm-hmm.
This is absolute bullshit. We should band together and riot and blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
What you guys have to understand is, number one, the Rolling Stones wrote a great song. Okay?
All right.
You can't always get what you want.
Oh, God.
Okay? I love the song, but you can't, right? You can't complain about housing prices, but then trumpet capitalism
Yeah.
and hate on socialism, because everything is so interconnected and interwoven that there's not a clear answer. And again, if you want an answer to what would solve the housing crisis right now, government subsidization
Yeah. 100%.
on the housing market.
100%.
So you know what would happen?
Exactly.
Every single developer and builder would be financed by the U.S. government to build as many houses as possible at the highest quality possible, as quick as possible. And then guess what would happen? You guys' home prices would go down, right? Property taxes would go down.
That's the fastest way to do it.
But now the government's got a hand in your house. And it's my property. Get off my lawn. I got a rattlesnake on my flag. Don't tread on me. Like, cool. That's great. And if that's what the viewpoint is, I 100% respect it, support it, everything, right? But you got to understand that at the base level, the developers are building the buildings and they are running a business, just like the banks are running a business, just like everybody is running a business. And that is the beauty. And it's Occam's razor, right, of capitalism. Like, you're going to be on one side or the other. So I would tell you, like, as long as you continue to educate yourself, make sure you're on the right side, right? My point earlier, if you're complaining about the secondary homes and, oh my God, these people are my landlord and blah, 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 blah.
The
Cool.
government's taking too much
Then
money
let's
from
figure
me.
out a way to get you into a house so you can start to build equity, 5-year plan, pull out a HELOC, then you buy your own rental property. And then you rent that out to somebody.
Yep.
Now all of a sudden the shoe's on the other foot, the tables, as it were, are turned, right? And now you go, well, actually, now I'm the landlord, so I'm actually making money. And wow, now this is great. Well, it is because you had the foresight to go, this is what my plan is.
Exactly.
You can't complain and go, well, I don't understand why my apartment rent is, what are you paying?
$2,000.
Right. Do you have what's your amenities like? Really nice?
Better than average.
Mine were like when I lived off Lone Tree in Ridgegate.
Yeah.
And I still miss that apartment because it was 1,200 square feet, 2 bed, 2 bath. Nothing crazy, like granite countertops, but my amenities, I had a movie theater room. I had a resort style pool. Like, when I say resort style, I'm talking cabanas with fans,
Nice.
like a little shallow area with chairs, standing umbrellas, fountains.
Guarantee you that's at $3,500 a month now.
Right. But when I was there, and this was, I bought my house in 2016, so this has been 2015, we were paying almost $1,900 a month, right? But the developers were incentivized to build that type of residence because that's what they made. That's where they made their money. They didn't build some bullshit thing with no pool and no balconies and no amenities. There's no money in it. So you can't complain and say capitalism is the world, but fuck you and my home prices. Like, no, dude, they're tied in together. Like, that's just how it works. So
100%.
if you can't figure out how to break the game, right, and start over, then figure out how to play it.
Yes.
And have the foresight, the knowledge, do the research, educate yourself, and figure out how, okay, this is the rules. I'm not a big enough person with enough influence to change them. So how do I play within the rules to make it benefit me?
Yep.
Do that.
And that's the thing too, is when it comes to home prices and regulation, them going up, down, whatever it is, again, there is a reason, and you've been talking about builders this whole time, right? But there's a reason that home prices continue to rise. We want to make money. Everybody who sells their house is not going to sell their house for a loss. And as that continues to happen, you have one property that goes up, then the next property that sells is going to go up, and then the next property that sells is going to go up. This is the only natural progression to how home prices can go because everybody wants to make money and nobody's going to sell to lose money.
So I have a client that embodies this perfectly, right? Bought their house back in, I think it's 2019, right? Big house, over $1 million. And they went in and they beat up the seller at that point on price. Like, beat them up. Got over $300,000-$400,000 off the price of the house, right? Steal. So proud of it. Like, yep, this is what I did. My negotiation skills, blah, blah, blah. I got it for a steal, Fast forward now. They're selling the house, right? They list way over what it should have been.
Yep.
Have complained the entire time as we've taken price drops. And the conversation was, I shit you not, just because I beat up the previous owner on price doesn't mean that I'm going to get beat up on price. Yep. Have they improved the house? No. Have they added any sort of additions or material square footage, usable living space to increase the value of the house? No. All they've done is lived in it from 2019 to 2023, where you saw housing prices increase just based off of supply and demand. And now the conversation, only 4 years removed, is, well, I beat them up on price. I'm not going to get beat on price.
Yep.
Well, did you do anything to improve the property? Well, no. But that's the mindset.
No, 100%.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, and at the end of the day, like, don't get me wrong, I'd love to sit here and say, and talk about it like, oh, we're, everybody wants to make top dollar. Nobody cares. It's just the money. But at the end of the day, self-preservation is the basis of our existence as a human, right? And I'm sorry, but anybody, I don't care who you are, you're not going to take a loss on your largest investment that you've ever made in your life. And that's where we are with this whole supply and demand situation. We have low supply, but people know that there's high demand. And what does that lead to? Higher prices. And exactly like you said, they thought that prices were going to go down specifically because demand was going to go down. Interest rates are up. People aren't going to be out in the market. Cool, we'll level out a little bit. But unfortunately, what we've seen is people are still capitalizing on the dollar and want to get top dollar for their home, as they should. You should. It's your investment. You should want to make all the money that you can. But as to Jamison's point earlier, we can't complain about it at this point, because if everybody wants to make top dollar, it is going to, and excuse me, but trickle down to where prices are going to be elevated. And Colorado, honestly, like, I am so grateful that I live in such a unique market, because we are one of the only places that have seen expansive home price growth during this growth through interest rates.
Yes.
And it's one of those things where now we're sitting at it and going, wait a second, Colorado's too expensive for Coloradans.
Yeah.
Like, you see most people now wanting to leave Denver because they can't afford cost of living. But again, it's because when they decide to leave, they're going, I'm getting mine. I'm selling my house for as much as I can.
Which you should.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that's what our job is, to make sure you get that, right? But again, expectations versus reality, something's very different.
Yes.
The other thing, I feel like people have forgotten about the housing market, right?
Yeah.
Because you look at other markets and you say, okay, the energy market, crypto, stock market, oil and gas, whatever it is, right? Tech, whatever it is. People forget that the housing market is one of the few markets that is driven specifically by one of the basic human needs, right? Like,
100%.
I feel like people forget that, and they go, well, housing is a luxury. No, it's not a luxury. I was just outside. It was raining and hailing. Do I want a roof over my head? Yes. Do I need it to raise a family? Fuck yes, you do.
Absolutely.
Like, that it's just a thing. And I feel like as people are looking at this and they're complaining about home price and all these different things and wondering why predictions are off, like, part of me thinks predictions are off because people just forget that housing is a basic human need. 100%. It is shelter. And that will never, ever, ever change unless we somehow come up with the technology to put an invisible dome over, you know what I'm saying?
I'm sorry, but it comes to your point of a basic human need. Homeless people, and I'm sorry, Denver, it is and it has been an issue, and we're working on it. California, New York, even they, you drive down 25, look at almost any underpass, they have a tent. We think of homeless people as sleeping with newspapers.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think REI has got to be making a killing.
Oh, 100%.
Because I've seen some of the
I don't know
nicest
how do they
tents
afford these tents?
in some of these homeless encampments where it's like, bro, do you have a living room and a guest room?
Yeah.
On
Dude,
225 in Mississippi?
I
Like, what are
legitimately
you
saw
doing?
somebody. It looked like they had a whole kitchen set up. They had a stove. They, like
Easy
like,
bake oven.
Yeah, a smoker. They probably pulled it out of the trash. But
Like, bro, is that a Traeger?
But to your point, it's basic. Everybody
Yes.
will need a place to live. Will want a place to
Yes.
live.
And I feel like people that see homes, and because there's an intrinsic value, because it is a supply and demand, they wrongly assume, and I'm not accusing anybody. I'm just to me, this is just one of the things that I've seen.
Yeah.
They assume that housing is a luxury.
It's a factor.
Right? And it's not a luxury. It is a necessity. Now, you can buy a luxury home, right? And if you have the means to do so, then yes. Do you have a larger home? I got friends that have bigger homes than I have. I have friends that have smaller homes than I have. Whatever it is based on your financial situation. But at the end of the day, it's a basic human need. And because it's a basic human need, it is one of a very small amount of markets that will consistently and only be dictated by supply and demand.
Yep.
That's it.
100%.
It's like food, right?
100%.
You need food, you need shelter, you roll in security, which is like shelter.
It is also one of the markets that is, and we've talked about it many times, as heavily influenced by emotion.
Yeah, like think about it, right? Think about oil and gas, okay? Oil and gas ebbs and flows throughout the year based on travel.
Yep.
Okay? Travel is not a basic human need.
No.
If we wanted to, everybody in this country could just boycott traveling.
Yeah.
By and large. And when I say boycott traveling, I don't mean like commuting to and from work. I'm saying
Fuck you, Frontier
stop,
Airlines. Stop charging me for my fucking bags and then making me sit in the thing.
Don't.
And then being like, oh, it doesn't fit. No.
They
Sorry.
were voted like second worst airline.
Yeah, as they should.
Yeah.
I'm still going to fly you because you do have cheap tickets and I can get away with it, but stop it.
Yeah, and your tray tables are a joke. Okay? It doesn't even fit my fucking phone.
Yeah.
Anyway, fuck you, Frontier Airlines. I told you this is the fucking episode, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm not saying like you boycott commuting to work, right? But you boycott vacations.
Yep.
Oh, well, but I like vacations. You like them. That's great. Are they a necessity? No. We could all, as a country, boycott and never take a vacation for the next 12 months. You know what happened to oil and gas prices? We'd be back down to like 98 cents a gallon.
Oh, yeah.
Because jet fuel is one of the most expensive. And if nobody takes vacations, you can't boycott not buying or living in some sort of shelter. You can't boycott eating. You can't boycott
and it's so
sleeping.
funny because it's such a basic
Clothing.
premise. It's such a basic premise to think that, oh, if we can get enough people together, we can affect it. But what I meant by saying like the housing market is so unique in the fact that, yes, the housing market is depicted by the individual.
Right.
If the individual wants to make more money, the individual is going to make more money.
Correct.
But at the end of the day, if the oil companies want to make money, I'm sorry, but you're not going to get an entire country of
No.
1 billion people plus going, I'm not going to buy gas.
But if you extrapolate and you go into the realm of impossibilities, you could.
Oh,
right?
But yeah, absolutely.
You could.
Absolutely.
You could not, in the realm of possibilities, prevent people from needing shelter. That's my whole point.
No, exactly. Yeah. And that's exactly what I mean in the fact that it being an emotionally driven market, it is controlled by us. Ultimately, agents, the people selling the homes, versus corporate companies, big companies that can regulate it and know, oh, if I cut price here, but we control the housing market.
Correct. We do.
Like, and as many people would want to say, oh, well, BlackRock's buying up all these single family and making it renter. It's going to be a renter state. No. Again, if you decide to sell to BlackRock, you've decided to sell to BlackRock.
And we went through this 2 episodes ago where we said that home ownership's actually increased over the last decade, right? Even with BlackRock, Zillow, Redfin, whatever it is. So, yeah, I think, I don't know, man. It's
going to be interesting.
It's wild. So here, let me ask you this: like for the next year, what's your prediction?
I think that.
What do you think is going to happen?
I mean, overall, it's the rising home prices that they're talking about are 1% to 2%
on the low end.
On the low end, right?
Zillow's at 5,
but
Moody's is about 4.
If we talk about across the country, I'm going to say that people are going to be too scared based on political, economic outcomes to put such high loans amounts down that I think over this next year, we're going to see it slow down a bit. The market, the inventory is going to be affected because at the end of the day, people are still sitting at 2.8, 3.2. They're not going to sell. So I do see that the market slowing down to a point where the decision is going to have to be made. Either I take a lower price for my home or I don't sell. And that's just based on overall sentiment in the market right now. That's what I'm seeing and that's what I'm predicting. But at the end of the day, I am at the bottom of the totem pole and I don't know how much money people have. So it could also be the reverse of, even though home prices are increasing, people are still able to afford it and they're moving in and they're going to continue to increase. But ultimately, I think that we're going to stagnate. We're going to be continuing this great stalemate where home prices are going to have to level in order to sell.
I respectfully disagree.
Go for it.
Here's my prediction. I think once the debt ceiling gets settled, you're going to see interest rates drop. I also think that as interest rates drop and inflation comes under a little bit more control and we start seeing that leveling out and we get to 4.5% inflation year over year area, I think the bond market's going to start to pick back up. I think that it's a caveat, okay? Bold prediction, I think home prices this year, back half of 2023, are going to go up, I'm going to say 5%. If one thing happens, if interest rates drop.
I can agree with that,
but
100%.
I believe that there is a caveat. Oh, not caveat, that's the wrong word. There is a wealth of information that's going to start coming out over these next, call it 6 to 8 months, that are going to force interest rates down. And in my head, we already know that the threshold is if we dip below 6.5, buyers come to the market. Okay, which means if we're at 6.4, we're going to see an increase in buyers with continued limited supply.
Yep.
Right? If we go down to like high fives, 5.75%,
It's free game at that
whatever, at that point, even more buyers are coming out.
Yeah.
But we're still not low enough to unlock those people that are at 3.75%,
100%.
which is about 70% of the mortgages right now.
Yep.
Which means now I've probably increased my buyers. I want to say, oh man, I got to look at the stats, so please don't quote me on this, but it was something along the lines of every 0.5% that the interest rate lowers brings about 100 to 150,000 buyers to the market. So from 7 to 6.5, 6.5 to 6.
The fact that we jumped to 23% mortgage applications when it went 0.8.
So in my head, if I go, okay, well, we're at 7 right now. So if we go 7 to 6.5, 6.5 to 6, 6 to 5.5, if inflation starts to level out, that's almost 500,000 buyers that are coming back to the market in the back half of the year. Okay. So if 500,000 buyers come back to the market in the back half of the year and we still don't have the supply, home prices are going to rise. They have to, right? That's it. Like money's cheaper. And we're not going to, supply is not going to increase at the rate necessary to match the decrease in,
not at all.
in interest rates, right? So that's what I think, that if you're looking to purchase a home, you've got probably the next 3 to 4 months, right? It's June, July, August, September, October. I'd say through September.
Yeah.
You've got a prime opportunity if you qualify and it makes sense for you and doesn't kill your monthly DTI and makes your house poor, to get a good deal. I think once we get through August, September, and those rates drop, you're going to be spending an extra $25,000, $30,000 on that house.
100%.
Because more buyers are going to come to the market.
100%.
That's
100%. No, honestly, I'm right there with you. And the reason that I say that home prices won't increase is just because looking at what I think is the overall sentiment that people have with home prices, with the real estate market right now, I think we're going to see a rubber band snapback of people being a little bit more timid to go into the market with what interest rates are doing.
I love this because we're on complete opposite spectrums.
Yeah.
You know what I see? FOMO.
Okay.
I see all these people on the sidelines waiting. Is the housing market going to crash? When is the housing market going to crash? I want to pick up a $500,000 house for $250,000. Then all of a sudden, once interest rates drop, and they go, holy shit, we're going the opposite way. I've been sitting on the sideline for 2 years.
Yep.
Fuck it. I'm buying now.
Oh, I'll agree with you 100%. If we get low sixes to high fives, it's a free for all. It's going to be.
And I think we will, because I think inflation will level out. I think the debt ceiling's now solved through 2025, so that's not on the radar. The Ukraine-Russia thing, I think, is more along supply chain issue than anything else, right? Like, I don't think that's really affecting the housing market. I look at more domestic, right?
Yeah.
I look at supply chain for building, which we kind of touched on it last week, where, not to get political, but because we've restricted the immigration flow, like, we are going to have a workforce and labor force issue to build all these houses. So I don't think, that's why I was saying, I don't think the housing construction is going to keep up with demand if interest rates drop, right, at all. Which also is why I think that the builder sentiment overall has increased over the last 3 months, because I think they're looking at the same thing. But if that's the case, that means you get cheaper money, and by cheaper, it's relative, right? You get buyers that have been experiencing FOMO and sitting on the sidelines like, I'm waiting for it to crash. And all of a sudden, if we hit 6% interest rates, guess what? There ain't no housing market crash, guys and
People
girls.
have been waiting for the market
Sorry,
to
they've
crash
been waiting.
since 2020.
And it ain't happening, right? So now what are you going to do? It's a basic human need. I want to buy a house now because, God forbid, in 3 years, it's even more expensive.
Yeah.
They're going to jump into the market. We still have a supply issue. You start to see the markets calm down because of everything else domestically is going to kind of level out. We're going into an election year.
And it's so crazy to me. And again, we talked about interest rates and even with the LLPAs.
Sorry, not election year. A ballot year. Election year is 2024.
If we get in to this situation where, with interest rates, as far as if they drop, the funniest part to me about interest rates is the most common thing is when people don't want to buy homes, that's when interest rates drop.
Yep.
And when interest rates drop, that's when people want to buy homes. It's such a reactive market.
It is.
Based
it's psychological,
on,
right?
Yeah.
Which is why I've said time and time again.
Or are you going to say it? Hold on. Is this the trademark?
It is.
Oh, say it. Go ahead.
Time in the housing market beats trying to time the housing market.
It's so good, guys. It's so good. Where's the shirt? Branding. We got to do it.
That's it, bro.
Put it
Like,
on.
I'm telling you, man, like, it is, stop trying to pick the perfect opportunity and base it on your scenario. Get into a house if it makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, don't fucking do it. That's perfectly fine. But talk to a professional, figure it the fuck out. And if you can get in, and you might be at a 6.75, but God forbid in 8 months, if the housing market decides to correct and you start seeing 5.75, refi, because most of the lenders I work with and you work with will do free refinance. They won't charge you for it.
Yep. Oh, this feels like a very good time to move into our one rock takeaway. It feels, honestly, sorry guys, like you said, this is our fucking episode.
It is.
Jamison and I are literally just chilling
And shooting fish in a barrel.
talking, drinking some bourbon. But I think it's a good time to move into the one rock takeaway, because if not, I could talk to you. We could talk about this for
Well, we're in
hours.
shelter, so there's a storm outside. We're safe.
Drinking bourbon.
Drinking
having a
bourbon.
good time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's all good.
So I'm going to go ahead and give my one rock takeaway. And my one rock takeaway is what Jamison just said. Don't try and time the market. Understand what you're able to do, how you're able to perform it, and what will best benefit you. And you will be prepared for whatever the market does. And again, please recognize if you can't buy now, that's okay. That gives you time to save and plan even more. And I'll tell you what, if you come to a house with a higher down payment, a lot of the time, that's going to help you out. So don't be scared. Plan. Expect it to be unexpected, and you'll be okay.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. Mine goes back to the Rolling Stones. I got to do it. I might do a song theme like every week. But you can't always get what you want, all right?
Hold on,
did.
Sorry, what was I cut you off there. What was it?
Oh, shit. No, I was saying the Rolling Stones, you can't always get what you want, okay? We as a society just want everything all at once at the same time. And we tend to put blinders on because if you start to look at layers, it gets too complicated, which I get, right? And that's what our job is. And it's why we do this podcast, is to try and break it down so that you guys understand, like, it's not very little in life is black and white. Would you agree?
100%.
Right? Like,
yeah.
besides Michael Jackson's song, Black and White, it's really, right? Love it. Great song. It's not. And you guys have to understand that, like, when you're complaining about home prices, but then touting capitalism over something and going up in arms about socialism and government subsidization, you got to understand, like, capitalism is driving your home values and your property taxes up. Mm-hmm. And the cure to that is government subsidization, like, straight up.
It's the only possibility.
Not saying that's what I'm advocating for, but at the same time, if you guys want a solution, that's one of the solutions, which would then be in a direct argument with capitalism, right? Because developers are in charge. So before you get angry and get on a soapbox and shout to the rooftops that blah, 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 whatever, understand that if you look at something, there is at least 10 layers underneath that you should explore before you formulate an opinion.
Yes. Educate yourselves, please.
Yes. Literally. Listen to us and then don't take us at gospel, right? If you sit there and go, well, Charlie and Jamison were saying some weird shit on that episode. Yeah. Cool. Guess what? Check us, because you have the world at your fingertips. He's said it before multiple times. Do the research, take the time, and I guarantee you that if you spend just even 10 minutes a day researching a topic that you don't have fundamental knowledge in, you will be a better person. You will be able to have more intelligent conversations. You will be able to have or make more intelligent and reliable decisions that in the long run will benefit you. Do it.
Unfortunately, that all comes down to a personal accountability, which is something that we are lacking these days. But at the end of the day,
I love you all. I'm just saying, I was gonna say, dose of reality, fucking figure your shit out.
I still love everybody, but we need to get to the point where we accept that we control our own fate. We control the outcome.
Yeah, and I want to make this point, right? When I say question everything, you can question everything. But do the fucking research, okay?
Up,
don't question
Back it up.
just to question.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I can question all sorts of shit. Mm-hmm. But if I'm just asking a bunch of questions and I don't have any fundamental knowledge of a potential answer or a different viewpoint, then I'm doing nothing but just adding bullshit into an already bullshit-filled atmosphere. And it's muddying the waters because it's bullshit, right? 100%. Like, do the research, ask the questions, get educated, and understand that, like, when you're talking macroeconomics, microeconomics, the housing, any market, anything from a financial standpoint, there's a lot to unpack. And we can only do so much. We want to give you guys as much information as possible. We do it while drinking bourbon. You do it while drinking wine, vodka. Doesn't matter. Tequila. I don't care. Whatever your vice is, you can do it. And don't give a fuck. Just do it. Like, put the effort in.
Yep. 100%. And on that note, I think it's time to move into our bourbon review.
Deal.
Right. Guys, this gave you such a unique introspection into
how our brains work.
Well, no, how we started this podcast.
True.
Because this is it. We're sitting down, we're having a conversation, and normally our episodes are more structured to, again, bring information to the consumer.
Yeah, but this is kind of fun. I like the bullshit episodes.
Well, and that's the whole thing, is like, we are normal citizens.
We just have a specialization.
Yeah, we
in real estate.
Exactly. And this is, if you're having conversations like this with your family members, your loved ones, your friends, that is a beautiful thing.
Yep.
And I'm so excited to be a part of it. Yep. Right.
Couldn't encourage it more.
On the bourbon review, I don't like this. I poured a second glass because I don't like this. I poured a second glass because I was like, you know what? Maybe after the first one, the second glass will get a little bit better.
Matthew McConaughey, I'm sorry.
But again, I'm biased at this point. For it to have the label of a small batch.
Yes, I think that's what kills it for me too.
Yes.
If it was just LongBranch.
Exactly.
Cool.
Exactly.
But the small batch gives it.
It's supposed to elevate
you need something.
Yes.
Yes.
And I feel like I was hoping for the second glass. I was hoping for it to be, maybe I let this open. It's sat a little bit and it's going to give No. I as far as the bourbon goes, my bourbon review, if I'm going to give a rock rating on it, I'm gonna give this a 6.5 to a 7. Only because I almost feel insulted.
I was gonna say cheated.
Yeah, that this has small batch on the bottle.
Yeah, I agree.
Based on the other small batches that we've had.
Yeah.
So again, for somebody who is new to bourbon, yes, if you want to show up and I brought a small batch. We're drinking good.
Yeah, if you're a baby back bitch.
To people who, if you
Buy
showed
this.
up with your friends at a
Just make sure your friends have never drank a small batch
that's
before.
what I was gonna say. Is like if you show up at a fire and you're like, "Yo, I brought a small batch. I got the shit, guys," and they don't know bourbon, they're gonna be like, "Yeah, small batch." But if you're a bourbon drinker and you pick this up and you're expecting a small batch, especially with the age, and that's
8
what
years.
blows my mind. 8 years and
Yeah,
the
so I
complexity
think
isn't there.
I think the next week I'm gonna do the Russell 10-year.
Okay.
Because we haven't done that yet, and apparently it's got great reviews. But it's aged 2 years. It's a Kentucky bourbon. I don't know what they did with the small batch, but I agree with you. Like, it leaves a lot to be desired.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. This is definitely the bourbon that you say you bought a small batch. Like, this is a small batch bourbon, but and maybe we've just drank too good of small batches in the past.
No, because I disagree. I think if I disagree with that statement. I agree with your previous that if it says small batch on the fucking label, you expect something.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's 6, 5, 7. So mine, I've done car analogies too. I do a lot of analogies on the show. I'm sorry,
But they're great.
they are good.
Keep doing them.
They are good. So you got the Camry, right?
Yeah.
Cool, reliable car. It's a family car. Seats 5. It's got the amenities, right? But it is what it is. It's a fucking Camry. And then they went ahead and slapped an RS on it. Right?
Yes.
And they went, all right, here's what we're going to do, guys. In the production meeting, we're going to take this car. We're going to make it fucking cool. What are you going to do? You going to add horsepower? Fuck no. What about suspension? Meh. What about like a stick shift? Hell no. Our clients don't drive stick shift. They're automatic. What are you going to do? I'm going to fucking give it black rims, a body kit, and a spoiler, and I'm going to put a red stripe on it, and I'm going to charge $20,000 more.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what this is.
I agree. And
That's what this is. Like, if this would have been LongBranch done,
Yes.
like wild turkey, but a different spin on it with
Yeah.
the mesquite charcoal and the American oak barrels, then I'm good because my
Yes.
expectations are it's wild turkey
with a
elevated.
twist.
So it's like extra wild turkey. I don't know, like a bigger wild turkey.
Yeah.
I don't know. We have them running around in Larkspur. They're fucking massive. Idiots cross the road all the goddamn time. I probably killed like 8. But you put small batch on it, and I go, I want something more.
Yes.
And we didn't get it.
No.
Can I sip it? Sure. I'll be honest though, price point wise,
It's not bad.
no, I disagree.
Okay, based on the small batch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this should be priced at like $35.
I was going to say 32. Yeah,
Right? Not
100%.
45.
No.
Right? Because I can pick up an Elijah Craig for 44. Just an Elijah Craig. Not
Angel's
single
Envy.
barrel, not single barrel select, just Elijah Craig.
The Angel's Envy that we had was $44.
Larceny
Larson
is
yep.
$29. And I love you, Matthew McConaughey. Again, everybody go watch Rain of Fire. It's a great fucking movie. But to charge $45 for something that is a small batch that doesn't taste like a small batch, I can't get on board with, dude. So I would match it. I'd say a 7.
7.
Right? Because I look at this, I'm like, my expectation would be I would compare this to like Woodford Reserve.
Yes.
Okay. So all right, it doesn't pretend to be something it's not.
Yep.
But it's still flavorful, blah blah blah, whatever. But Woodford was like a 4,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
This doesn't touch it.
No. And it just comes down to the flavor overall. 100%.
Zero complexity.
Yeah.
It doesn't taste like an 8-year aged. It doesn't have the alcohol content or the proof of an 8-year, and it doesn't have the uniqueness that you would expect from a small batch.
The one thing that I can give it credit for is the difference in the smoke taste.
Sure.
That's the
Mesquite
one thing.
charcoal.
Yes, you can 100% taste the bitterness of that change in the.
But it's not enough to
No,
not
to constitute a small batch label with a 45.
Yeah, if you're a beginner listening to this or watching this, yeah, I could probably point you to a different bourbon, like a Larceny or Elijah Craig for a little bit cheaper that I think you would enjoy more.
Yeah, 100%.
You know,
100%.
but if you like Wild Turkey and you want a little bit more, sure.
Yep.
I could pass this around a bonfire and just drink it straight from the bottle.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. 100%.
And feel a little bit better about myself than if it was Jack Daniels.
Yes. 100%. 100%. Well, on that note, guys, thanks for hanging out with us on this episode. I know it was a fuck it episode, but I enjoyed it. It was
I like
nice.
fuck it episodes,
Yeah,
man. Like,
it was good, relaxed,
we're just
good
talking,
conversation.
bro. Yeah.
Guys, remember, you can catch us on YouTube at Living in Colorado, The Mile High Perspective. Subscribe, like, follow, comment, and then you can get in contact with us at RESOTR at The Mile High Perspective.
Yep.
Or
give us a call, 303-578-0263. And then just so you guys know, we're going to be hosting a pool party.
yeah, we got a pool party coming.
June 24th.
June 24th.
What time?
Up in Thornton, 12 to 4 p.m.
And where's it at?
Red Hawk Ranch.
So if you guys want to drop by, we'll put the link for the flyer.
Yep.
In the video, and love to have you guys come out. We're gonna have some prizes, talk real estate, have fun, celebrate summer.
That's right.
It should be a really good day.
Absolutely.
So
yeah, looking forward to it, guys. Thanks for joining us on this week's episode. We'll come back prepared for you
with a better bottle of bourbon.
Yep. Cheers.